But look, our economy is beyond repair. Our debts will not be paid. The dollar is getting watered down at the same time as our debt level is increasing. You're seeing it all around you with your own eyes. What you're witnessing is an actual slowing down of the overall economy. And if you haven't been seriously affected yet, you certainly know someone who has. In this tiny film, we're going to take a look at every step of the way what brought us here and how it's all leading up to two very negative outcomes, one of which is actually the pinnacle of economic evil.
1 in 6 people received help from the charitable food sector last year.
Homelessness rates have climbed nationally by about 6% every year since 2017.
And your mortgage payments may have recently doubled because the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to ironically fight the inflation that they themselves caused in the first place. And this all is leading up to two major, absolutely certain events.
People are working 3, sometimes 4 jobs just to pay the bills.
Over 421,000 people were homeless in the U.S. last year.
And if you don't think that this economic sludge is affecting you yet, or you believe the economy is strong because they keep telling you it's strong, then let me ask you a couple questions. Why does the government keep running out of money or threatening every few months to shut down again because they can't pay their workers? There's not enough money. Why has Janet Yellen been talking about $1 trillion coin, which is basically made up of about $8,500 worth of platinum? All this fiscal irresponsibility is why our federal debt is many multiples past the point of being mathematically payable. That's why we also have nearly $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Over the next 75 years, taxpayers face nearly $80 trillion in long-term unfunded obligations. And the official U.S. published national debt number is just under $34 trillion. But if you ask the Truth in Accounting, they're going to tell you that it's more like $192 trillion. And Truth in Accounting also goes on to say that each taxpayer's share of the national debt is $964,000. Obviously, none of this is payable. None of it's your fault. Far from it, actually. But unfortunately, this is all going to be affecting you all the same.
Nearly 4 in 10 Americans lack money to cover a $400 emergency expense.
Czechoslovakia, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and Switzerland all abandoned the gold standard in the mid-1930s. We ourselves abandoned the gold standard in 1933. All of our economic woes can be sourced back to that point. 1971, that's when President Nixon formally unpegged the US dollar from gold. Overnight, the dollar became a free-floating currency, and it was joining the ranks of all the other currencies in the world, which were all fiat, except for the US dollar, until Nixon unpegged the convertibility of dollars into gold. But listen to what it says here, that overnight the dollar became a free-floating currency measurable only by comparing it to other world currencies, all of which are fiat. So to get the value of a dollar, you're just comparing it to a bunch of other stuff that has no underlying value beneath it either. Once our currency became fiat, it just was simply an idea that we all agree upon. It's not backed up by anything. There's literally zero value in the dollar bill except for the confidence that you put into it and the confidence that the person you're handing it to is also putting into it.
17 million households have food insecurity.
As a fiat currency, it became incredibly simple for politicians just to do big bouts of quantitative easing and getting more liquidity into the system. All of the bouts of quantitative easing involved massive chunks of new monetary creation. The Federal Reserve's primary responsibility is to keep the economy stable by managing the amount of money in circulation. Now look at this monetary creation chart. Does that look stable to you? By the way, what happened to gold during all of this chaos? Over the past 50 years, gold has expanded more than 46 times, with a compound annual growth rate of about 8%. In other words, over longer time frames, gold outperforms most other asset classes. The politicians, of course, just kept going back to the monetary creation well again and again. And they're going to keep on going back to the monetary creation well again and again. Don't expect them to change at all. It's too simple. It's too effective. Specifically, it becomes easier for a politician to make a fiscally regrettable decision when it helps them get elected or when they don't understand the long-term effects of the decisions that they make. And they know that they've got a shelf life as a politician, and they always can blame whoever's there before them for any mistakes that they make. The other guy set that up. It just fell apart when I was in power. It's all about plausible deniability. Think of it this way. The economy is this big lumbering beast of a thing that moves so slowly. And over here, you've got politicians where their frequency of their turnover is a lot higher than the turnover of the economy. Something in the economy that's meaningful might take decades to play out, whereas A politician will come and go and make decisions in that time and then be gone. You've heard the expression death by 1,000 cuts. This, I'd say, is sort of like death of an economy by 1,000 somewhat bad decisions. Don't forget, the big Peter Leeds sale is on right now, but it won't be for much longer. You're looking at getting our world famous stock picks for only about $11 a month. Meanwhile, we dropped from the number one manufacturing nation in the world to number two. Not so much that we were falling back, we were a little bit, but also at the same time, China was increasing so quickly. And you can see here of all the global manufacturing, China's putting out about 20% of it, whereas we are putting out about 18%. So it's pretty close, but we're doing it with a smaller percentage of our total economy. And all these different moving parts just combined into one thing where we are now the most indebted nation in the history of history. We've got a $33.7 trillion debt or so. And then you add to all this that the velocity of money also dropped off a cliff pretty significantly. The velocity of money is just measuring how many times a single dollar is used as it passes through the economy. So you can see when the velocity of money declines, that's showing you that the activity of the economy is in decline as well. But isn't the economy strong because the unemployment rate is so low? As you're going to see in this tiny film, we are going to have a recession. And also, you're going to learn that the unemployment rate starts to climb once the recession starts. We just had the longest economic expansion in our history. From June 2009, which was the end of the Great Recession, to February 2020. And that longest economic expansion in our history was only interrupted by that little baby recession that lasted 2 months and nobody really counts. There's way too much excess that never got worked out of the system during that time. It didn't recess for long enough or strongly enough. But you might say that the stock market is doing so well. How can you say the economy is not strong? But a lot of people are conflating the stock market with the economy. They used to be more directly connected. They're completely detached now. They're manipulated. You've got a plunge protection team. You've got job owning among the politicians. So the stock market can do really well, just like it did in Venezuela. It did incredibly well. It's the best performing stock market in the world. But you still can't get a loaf of bread or medicine. Another follow-on effect of all this is that then we spend more than we collect in taxes, which leaves us with a national deficit, which has grown over the years to $1,695,148,000,000, yada, 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 dollars. To cover that shortfall, we often just take on more debt, and it just adds to our overall debt level, or our debt load. Sometimes we just make more money by creating it out of thin air by changing a couple of numbers on our balance sheet. And you say, but no, it can't be that easy. And unfortunately, it is. That's why we have $34 trillion in debt, because it is that easy. When we had a deficit before, we often used to borrow money from other countries to lend them money. They buy our treasuries, and it covers off some of the shortfall that we have. That's why Japan owns $1.1 trillion of American debt. That's why China owns $895 billion of American debt. But what happens now that China and Japan are not buying our debt anymore? In fact, they're not only not buying our debt, they're actually selling some of the debt that they do own or have. This is from Nikkei Asia. Japan and China's share of U.S. Treasury holdings has declined to the lowest on record. The U.S.'s two biggest foreign buyers are reducing their holdings, while America is issuing more debt than ever. Plus, at the same time, as I showed you, the velocity of money slowing down just makes the overall problem worse. By covering the debt with new monetary creation, the dollar is getting watered down at the same time as our debt level is increasing. And you need to know that the federal government is already defaulting on their liabilities through inflation, creating all this money, watering down the value of the money. Let us help you navigate the slow motion economic train wreck that we're all going through right now. Please click like on the video, make a comment, and hopefully you'll subscribe to the channel to get more videos just like this one. A couple months before I was born, in 1973, that's when the US petrodollar system was established. It was an agreement between America and Saudi Arabia. We said we'll give you a bunch of military equipment and protection, and you just make sure that any oil you sell is in US dollars. And as the petrodollar diminishes, it's used less in global currency. Saudi Arabia is selling oil in petro yuan now. And a lot of countries are using or buying oil, trading oil in currencies other than the US dollar. So the petrodollar system is falling apart, even though most oil is still traded in US dollars. But as nations have less need to hold as many US dollars because they're not going to be buying oil in the American dollar, then a lot of those dollars will indirectly, eventually, find their ways back to our shores, and it'll stoke inflation at that point. There'll be a lot of money here that is chasing the same amount of goods. That makes prices go higher. But then let's fast forward about 40 years to more recent times, the global financial crisis. From 2007 to 2008, that was called the most severe worldwide economic crisis since the Great Depression of 1929. In terms of the global financial crisis, I don't feel that we've ever actually come out of the crash. There's a lot of excess that didn't get worked out of the system. And we just delayed that crash a little bit with all this monetary creation. Look at this chart again and see how they delayed the global financial crisis from spiraling out of control. They just dumped money onto it. And so what is this all leading up to? Two very specific guaranteed outcomes. Both of them bad. One of them is actually the pinnacle of economic evil. We'll get to the evil one last. First, I'm going to talk about the other problem, which is the inbound recession. So you might be in agreement that a recession is coming, and you might wonder what to do in a recession. I'll tell you right now. I'll show you right now. I'll go really quickly through it, and then we're going to get to the economic evil that's being foisted upon you. It's going to affect you. Before the recession gets here, you plan for the worst, you hope for the best, you learn, you educate, you spend less money. You expect the US dollar to decline, which will make things bought and sold in US dollars more expensive. You expect the unemployment rate to rise. You take all that into account, watch the stuff, and keep an eye on it. And then when you want to invest, here's a list of some of the things that hold up better in a recession. I'm not going to go through them all. You can look at them on screen. But look, our economy is beyond repair. Our debts will not be paid. There will not be enough money to put towards our expenses, even the costs that we've already taken on. It's almost at the point where we can't even afford to cover the carrying costs on the debts that we have in terms of the federal debt. And as our economy stumbles, as it is and it will continue to do, the powers that be, and I mean politicians and by extension, the Federal Reserve actors and the Treasury Department, all of them are going to come together and think that they have the greatest solution. It'll be simple and effective, but that's all in their minds. The solution itself, once implemented, will instantly remove any degree of privacy you have or control over your finances that you have. This evil thing that I'm talking about is the central bank digital currency, the CBDC. It's bad, it's serious, and it's absolutely economic evil. They can spy on you, they control what you buy, they can allow you or disallow you to buy certain things. They can force you to take certain actions that you wouldn't have otherwise taken.
Over 421,000 people were homeless in the U.S. last year.
American baby boomers are now becoming homeless at a rate not seen since the Great Depression.
This is from an article from the Cato Institute, The Risks of CBDCs, and I pulled out specific lines that, when I went through it, that I think would really get your attention, hopefully. The central bank will have absolute control. A CBDC would most likely be the single largest assault to financial privacy since the creation of the Bank Secrecy Act. With so much data in hand, a CBDC would provide countless opportunities for the government to control citizens' financial activity. They can freeze or seize assets. They can force negative interest rates onto you to try and spur you to go out and spend money before it loses its value. You could be prohibited from buying certain goods. They could limit how much you can buy, even if you have something like, say, outstanding child support payments or a driving under the influence charge. Maybe you can't buy beer, which I'm in favor of that for both those examples. But the point is, the first thing they're going to do is going to be great. Everyone's going to love it. That's how they're going to get you locked in. And next thing you know, the government will have the potential to run wild in any possible way they can imagine to control you, your spending habits, watch you, monitor you, regulate what you do. Then you also have all of the central storage of all of our financial information in one place. The central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations, and also will have the technology to enforce them. What can you do? I would say boycott the CBDC when it comes out. If they have a choice of using it or not using it, stick with old currency, especially with the global state of the world right now. If World War III breaks out, or another pandemic, or we have another financial crisis, anything happens, they're going to use that as an excuse to say, okay, we're going to have to convert everybody to the central bank digital currency. And that's the moment right then, if you adopt it or you accept it, that's when you lose all your privacy or all your financial autonomy. Don't forget, the big Peter Leeds sale is on right now, but it won't be for much longer. You're looking at getting our world famous stock picks for only about $11 a month. Let us help you navigate this slow motion economic train wreck that we're all going through right now. Please click like on the video, make a comment, and hopefully you'll subscribe to the channel to get more videos just like this one.